Be the change you want to see. Sometimes you don't even know you're doing it, or you don't know what it looks like, but always do what's right and what's in your heart. And that's exactly what my first guest did. We were going to talk to the gentleman who did this wonderful book, 3 Lines in a Circle. We're waiting to get his connection on Zoom, so we'll get to him as soon as we can. But Shannon is here. Shannon Masterson, founder of the KY IEP Advocate. That's Individualized Education Program. Founder. How'd this get started?
I have been an occupational therapist for 14 years, and 10 of which have been in town. So I've been working with school-aged kids in and out of schools, and just kind of realized that there was a pretty big disconnect between what parents were understanding about what happened at school and what was really happening, and knowing what questions to ask and who to ask them to. So
I laugh when you say that, because my daughter is a first grade teacher. And she says that all the time. And the teachers spend so much of their time and resources just trying to make the pieces come together, and it just doesn't always happen. And if they don't, then that's a hindrance for the child. So what do you all do?
So I work with parents and try to teach them the special education process so that they know how to get their kids evaluated, what it looks like after their kids are evaluated, and then how to continue to advocate for their kid through the special education process that repeats every 3 years.
And I just want to make sure that parents understand this. This is so important, because you have to meet every child where they are. If you don't, I believe, and this is from talking to a daughter who, that is just what her soul is. She's a teacher, and she'll talk to me about a child, and she'll say, I've got to have all these meetings because I can tell that he learns differently. And when we teach him the way he has to learn, he excels. When people don't pay attention, he doesn't. So there's all kind of things. If you don't get certified and get that in their folder, the opportunities get missed.
Yeah, and just knowing as a parent, when you're not there in the classroom every day,
That someone will be.
Right. What is the best way to communicate with that person? What is the best way to get your kid that individualized attention that they need, and also maintain good, respectful communication across the board with everybody?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, you know, you don't want this to happen, but if a child's not learning, you know, he feels bad or she feels bad, and the parents are all frustrated, and it just makes a very hard situation. So how do you even get started in that process? Because as a parent, should you be the one to say, I think there's something going on, and if that's the case, what's the first step? Or is it the teacher? Does the parent go to the teacher and say, I think there's something going on?
The good news is, in Kentucky, it can be anybody. So it can be anybody at school. It can be the teacher who notices that there are some disconnects within the classroom. It can be a parent that is noticing, you know, maybe it's your second kid and you realize your first kid was reading a little bit better and you're a little concerned about what is or is not happening in the classroom. It could be somebody who works in the cafeteria that notices there's some social deficits in the cafeteria. They could go to the teacher and talk. So it's really, it starts as a team effort before you even really know who's on the team.
Okay, so you're saying everybody. So that could be anybody watching right now that has a part in any child's life. When you see, though, that there's something going on, who's the first? Is the teacher the first person that you stop to talk to?
A lot of times, yes, during the school year, that's going to be your point of contact, because that's who you're going to see most often. But in the summer, that's a lot more difficult because you're not seeing those teachers.
Right.
And maybe next year's teacher, you don't even know who they are. So you can always email somebody at the Board of Education and in the administrative office, and they can get you a meeting to sign the consent to evaluate. That's how you get that whole process started.
So you are the founder of the KY IEP Advocate, which is really something necessary. KYIEPadvocate.com. If you want to go on and see what they have, this is to teach and to support and to advocate for. What do you all exactly do in the life of the child?
So currently I am meeting with parents individually this summer and going through some advocacy strategies, going over their paperwork, looking at the documentation to see really how the last 18 months have gone and where they want to see the education plan go moving forward. And then I do group training, so now hopefully we're going to be able to do some more in-person group trainings where you can bring your paperwork in, you can see what other people's plans look like, sometimes from other districts, and see what is happening there. And then also get more advocacy strategies so you can learn how to communicate with your school better.
Are you responsible for all the schools?
I'm not responsible for them, but I work with parents.
You work, okay, that's a lot.
It is. It has, you know, it has changed a lot in the last year and a half, in that before I was really meeting with people in person, so I was not really limited, but kind of limited to the Louisville area, and now I'm meeting with people in Eastern Kentucky, I'm meeting with people in other states, I'm answering questions, definitely with a much farther reach than I had before.
For the parent who says, I don't want to put my child through that process because I don't want them to be labeled. And that's something we should never do to begin with. That's why people don't talk about their mental health. They don't want to be labeled. We need to stop that. What do you say to that parent?
That your kid is still your kid. Your kid is the same kid your kid was last week, whether or not they have a label. Your kid is the same kid they're going to be next week. But your kid may need some extra services, and just making sure that you're not doing your child a disservice by not wanting to have them labeled.
And when you say extra services, what does the school system have for them? Counselors, mentors, tutors? What are we talking about?
So there are, at the end of an individualized education plan, there are special education minutes that are delivered by special education teachers. And then after that, there are related services. And that is a long list of related service professionals.
Right. And that could be anything.
Yep. And those people you'll go through and during the assessment and figure out which of these things are negatively impacting your child's education. And as long as your child's education is negatively impacted, they will qualify for these services.
So is the child ever taken out of, I know they call it mainstreaming, but are they mainstreamed, and so that child with special needs is in a regular class, or are there IEP classes?
Across the board. So there are kids who are always in a gen ed classroom who have a resource teacher that comes in and modifies their curriculum as needed. There are kids that will leave and go just for a reading or writing or a math class or a social skills group, and they will leave, go to a resource classroom and do that. And then there's other kids that spend most of their time in a resource classroom and will leave to go to art, music, gym, and get their exposure with gen ed kids in that way.
So it sounds like what you are saying is every situation is as different as the child.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Anything you want to make sure they know?
Just that you can find me online. You can find me on Facebook, and we are working really hard to get the kids the services that they need in Kentucky, and who knows how far.
All right. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
My daughter always says it's the most important thing is to make sure you meet a student where they are and make sure they are as successful as they can be. So it's KY IEP Advocate.com or 502-386-1072.